All the.
Oh, salutations.
All right. Well, welcome to today, Kristen. Welcome everybody.
Welcome. What's up with the music today?
You tell me.
We're going to talk about Tolstoy. I was wondering, is this stereotypical for us to play this kind of music?
Sorry, I'm gonna turn it down because I can't hear you at all. What's up?
Is it stereotypical for us to play this kind of music? We're going to talk about a Russian book.
Folk music is folk music. Why would you if we were going to talk about Southern literature in the U.S., I would play some bluegrass. I don't
okay.
Just because something evokes a country doesn't make it offensive, right? Because otherwise, how would you ever play anything related to a country, right? There's a reason. I'm not gonna say there's a reason stereotypes exist, but there's a reason why there are associations between folk music and a place.
I think it's about timing or the contemporary nature. So, for example, because we're talking about historical book, it's probably okay. But we're talking about contemporary Asian American author, and we play some ancient Chinese music, that would be inappropriate, I think.
I mean, unless they were talking about ancient China.
Yeah, which a lot of them are not. A lot of them are we're crying in H Mart right now.
Well, okay, so I think the root of racism is the compression of nuance into a flat image or mapping, and
exactly.
that is that.
So nice Russian music for the intro.
I mean, I enjoyed it. It was fun trying to find something too, because I don't know. Do you do cultural deep dives when you're thinking about a culture?
For reading a book or something?
In general, if I see, when I watched Chernobyl, the series, I did a deep dive on that region of the world because I think that's really interesting. And so I'll try to match my media consumption around a piece of media to I don't know, it's thematic. It's okay, this is I'm watching something that's from Bollywood. I'll try to understand why this thing exists because I think that's fun.
I do go through my Wikipedia rabbit holes.
That counts. That counts.
Yeah. Certainly for today's author, I had to do it.
Yeah. Shout out Tolstoy. We'll be talking the death of Ivan Ilyich later in the show.
Do you think someday you'll have a Wikipedia of yourself?
Man, I hope so. We talk about ego.
Hey, monkey's paw. We need to declare we want a Wikipedia entry, but it can't be because you went to jail or murdered someone. That's how we catch.
I mean, that's the option of last resort, right?
Well,
no, I'm not optimizing for infamy.
Infamy, yeah, which a lot of kids are these days. Yikes.
Yeah. Wait, what do you mean?
I mean, that's what the school shootings a lot of times are about, right?
I don't know. You tell me. I'm not a. I was called a school shooter when I was in high school sometimes.
Yes. Well, how was that?
Bad, but it was I grew up in Georgia, and so as a young hooligan, back in the scene kid emo kid days, I just fit a generic hooligan energy in terms of, okay, I wore, skinny jeans and had band t-shirts and stuff. And so that was what I came across to people that didn't really want to pay attention to me. You know what I mean?
That is unfortunately a bit of a default school shooting uniform.
I think there's more trench coats involved in the true to life. But yeah, sometimes I just lived my life the way that I was living it and experienced what I experienced. Georgia. But Kristen, I forgot what I was going to say. So please fill airtime while my brain is catching up.
Well, you do get an excuse since you have what I've learned before we went live, COVID toes.
Okay. Okay, well, we'll talk about that. Yeah, no,
Well,
my
it's
my
related to our topic of the day.
yeah, I
Um,
guess disease for sure. I've been dealing with that for the past like week or so, which is really annoying. I mean, like I've when I was in the army, I had to deal with like big old blisters on my feet anyway, so it's not like something I've never dealt with before, but it is kind of annoying walking around my house and being like, okay, it's like I just did a 20-mile ruck march, but in fact, I've just done my cushy working for my screen life.
mhm. Like, I think one of the biggest regrets people have is like not looking at after parts of our body, right? Like for me, like I do occasionally get cavities, and every time I'm like, no, I did not brush enough or floss enough, um, in order to prevent that from happening.
Yeah.
Like
The okay, what is enough?
it's right because like the dental hygienist will always be like, you missed a spot, but I tell them that I know because there is like a habitual way in which I floss or something, right? Where I always miss a certain spot. It's probably the last tooth, it's really hard to get to.
So so I have a my uncle's a dentist.
Oh.
And so I'm gonna paraphrase him, but like one
Mhm.
time I was just like, dude, just tell me the like truth. Like,
Mhm.
how does dentistry work in terms of patients? Because I'm reflexively like rebellious or skeptical of whatever authority is trying to tell me something. I like try to listen to people that have studied things more than me, of course.
Mhm.
But like I was just like, hey, be straight with me, dude. And he's just like, honestly, for the most part, there are people that get cavities and there are people that don't. There are people that their gums bleed when they floss and there's people that don't. And you can like there's some wiggle room within your particular archetype of dental health,
Mhm.
but for the most part, it's kind of out of your control.
Oh, okay.
So like, which sucks because I'm a super high agency internal locus of control guy, and that it doesn't mean
Mhm.
don't brush because like if you don't brush, for sure, unless you're like one of these super genetic people, like you will be more likely to get it. But there is like a certain level of dental hygiene that you'll ever be able to achieve, and it's like the same thing with lifting, right? You have a genetic potential, and
Mhm.
unless you take steroids or whatever, like you're just kind of gonna be in that spot.
So you're saying that I need to find the steroids, but for our teeth.
Yeah, you need to actually be doing 100 reps, 10 sets each of
Mhm.
tooth gains every morning.
Okay. Well, I do buy this Japanese toothpaste with hydroxypartite or something like that. That's
What is
supposed
that?
to help remineralize your teeth.
Wait,
It's supposed
who's
to mimic
demineralizing my teeth?
the bacteria
Oh,
that's making the acid. So we'll see. Like, okay, here's the thing: it substitutes fluoride, and it's like magical Japanese technology. But I've been using that, and it seems to be helping. So
what does helping mean?
I don't. I have been getting like kudos from my dental
Oh,
hygienist for the last two visits. That is
so
the best it
okay,
can
so
be.
you
Nothing
have
going
2 data
wrong.
points in 2 years?
Yeah, well, in the past year, which is not bad. Like
Oh, so you
considering I
you go
had
to the dentist
cavities.
twice a year?
Yeah, yeah. Which is what people should do if if your insurance covers it,
Yeah,
because
totally.
you need to maximize the usage of benefits
Yeah,
if
I
you have
definitely do that. I
them.
I definitely do that.
Yeah. Oh, we're giving the impression that we're a dental episode now. Oops.
This is a dental episode. If you don't care about dentistry, scroll away.
We're
Uh,
talking about regrets, and we're
yeah.
starting off with like things that you tell younger people to like watch out for, like so that you don't end up with issues later in life, usually in your 30s when you're like, "Uh-oh, something is going wrong
Yeah. I mean, is anything going wrong with you right now?
health-wise."
I don't know.
Uh, I think well, luckily, like touch
Dang it.
wood. Well, I see that Cameron has some technical issues, so things are going wrong in your life. Um, yeah, I've been very lucky. I feel like relatively healthy right now. Wow, their camera is like really doing stuff.
You know what? Just keep going. I'll figure it out.
Okay, we were just joking about how VCR like which the scan lines. Oh, Lewis is here. The scan lines look as if popular again amongst musicians, and at this rate, we might be degrading to that level. Um, let's see here. Okay, lots of discussion about Lewis's Stannis fluoride toothpaste. I do know that about him. And yes, 2 weeks in a row of disease. This show is uplifting. Exactly, Cool Beans. You know us. We like to bring up depressing topics and try to make them uplifting because, I guess that's the Buddhist chaplain in me. Like, a part of my job is to remind people that we're all gonna get sick and die, so that we prepare for it and not just like keel over and have no time to do that. Welcome back. Oh, okay.
Oh,
Welcome
yeah.
back for real.
All right, we'll see if this holds up. I have like a hacky way of dealing with my camera, and it sometimes is cooperative, and today it doesn't seem to be. But
Mm-hmm.
we're here. All right,
What
so I missed everything. Catch me up.
I'm moving on to ask you questions. Is that
Sure.
okay?
Yeah.
um, what is your biggest regret? What
Oh,
an uplifting
okay.
show.
Well, since we're starting light, um, so I obviously was reflecting on this for because this was of course going to be asked.
Hmm.
I have like a didn't do something regret. And then I
Hmm.
also have what I kind of consider a recurring regret cluster,
Oh,
because because these are like honestly two important parts of me. What is happening?
is that like a little? I'm trying to like physically illustrate a cluster because,
Oh, I thought you were being a crab.
or that.
The so my biggest like doing things regret is that I will never get a chance to go back to ranger school in the army. And so
Oh, is Ranger under Army? Like,
yeah, that's why they're the
I
Army Rangers.
I did not know that. I thought they were like a separate thing.
Nope.
Oh,
So every branch has
the
a
more you
like special
know.
operations forces.
Mhm.
In the Navy, it's Navy SEALs.
Mhm.
Marine, it's like recon. Technically, Delta Force it like feeds from all of the different branches of the military. But the
Mhm.
Army has Army Rangers and then special forces, which are like different. They have different mission sets.
Mhm.
But Ranger School is a qualification that you need to have to become an officer in the Army Rangers, but also every infantry officer. It's kind of like one of those things where technically you don't have to go through it or pass it, but it's
Mhm.
a de facto requirement of the job.
Mhm.
And so when I went, I ended up like breaking my foot, and
Mhm.
so and then I went to a unit that was mechanized. And so usually what they'll do is you show up to your unit and they'll send you back to the school. But I showed up and they just were like, "Hey, we're not going to send you back. You can do it when you go to captain's career course." And then I never went to captain's career course because I got out, and so I never got my ranger tab, which is a bummer. But nothing. What can you do, right? Like I'm not going to stay in an extra few years to go do a school that ultimately just puts my life on hold. And so that's like the productive regret that I sometimes think about. And then my other biggest regret is like a behavior that I do, which more or less amounts to not really nurturing personal relationships that I have.
Oh.
And so I kind of have two modes. And
Mhm.
I mean, you've seen this. I have like hyperfixation or fully out of my mind.
Mhm.
And so
I feel like
when,
I've only seen hyperfixation.
well,
You
yeah,
don't
because
have
if
a
you
lot
were
of out of
fully
your
out of my
mind.
mind, we wouldn't interact.
Yeah, exactly. So I only get to see one side.
And so like when when circumstances like align,
Mhm.
it's obviously easier to be friends with somebody if you see them every day in class, like in high school or college or whatever, or you like are a coworker. But so my like as soon as the situation kind of changes or like I focus on a different thing or because I've
Mhm.
switched industries a bunch in the past like decade as well, I just kind of drop it, right? Like there's some
Mhm.
people that I'm so impressed that they do like a weekly phone call with people they want to stay in touch with, or they like text like somebody that's in a different city every other day. And I like, I just don't have like, I can make myself do that stuff, but it's
Mhm.
not a natural path or natural line of drift that I go down, if that makes
Mhm.
sense.
Mhm. So, like, do you have like friends or significant others who like help you with mediating these relationships?
No, I just don't
Um,
have
okay,
like,
well,
you know?
I'm gonna put myself
I mean,
into this role.
like, I think it is one of those things that, like, yes, your partner can kind of, like, babysit you and, like, make you do this or encourage you to do
Mhm,
this, but, like, it ultimately falls down onto me on, like, okay, if this is a relationship that I think is meaningful and adds, like, color and texture to my life,
mhm,
I have to put in the work. And it's like there's no one to blame for it but me. Like, the other party obviously has a little bit of blame in it, but they like it's like a reciprocal energy transfer, right?
mhm,
And so,
mhm,
and then of course there's some people that you like reach out to and they don't respond, and that's kind of on them.
mhm.
But like I have like embedded friend group issues too, and so that's like mixed up into it as well.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
I would love to unpack that. Or we can have a one sentence summary.
Oh, I mean, so like I tend to
This is
be
why we have this show, so that we have friends who will hang out with us at 8 a.m. in the morning.
Oh, I thought we had this show so that we wouldn't have to pay for therapists.
Oh, right,
The
right, right. That too.
no, so like whenever I'm in a friend group,
Mhm.
I baseline suspect I'm not actually part of the friend group.
Oh, nah, nah.
Well, okay. There's a reality there though too. And
Mhm,
so based in like way back in high school, I was I was like the hooligan energy kid, but I also got good grades. And so I
mhm.
ended up having like a cluster of, we'll say, like smart kid friends, but their parents kind of didn't like me that much because I was, smoking weed and playing Halo, some, you know what I mean? Like that, like I was doing hooligan stuff. And then but my hooligans knew that I was like also getting good grades. And so like there was a bunch of different, I didn't really fit into either of these groups. And then over time, the groups kind of like morphed into specialized versions of themselves. And I like just stopped getting invited to a lot of stuff. Uh, and so that was like kind of a root of it. And then same thing
Mm,
when I got to college, like I have a default group of friends that like I could always show up and hang out with everybody. But
mhm.
since I was like so focused on like grades and prepping for the army and stuff like that, I kind of self-selected out of the bulk of like the formative experiences. Cause I also like didn't want to go like at military college. The number one pastime is to get away
Mhm.
and go get trashed at a different college and LARP that you're at a different college. And like, I just
Yeah.
didn't like doing that a lot of the time.
Yeah, yeah. Because I think there's some people who have like a continuity of experiences with the same group of friends,
Yeah.
right? So you have a lot of backlog. Whereas like for people like us who move around a lot, you end up with like fragmented friend circles and
Yeah.
like no one like very few people know us for a long enough duration.
Yeah. I,
So
like I have
I plan
a,
to stick around to make up for like, a few decades if that's okay.
wait, what?
Oh, I plan to like hover around you like a little fly for the next few decades.
Let's hope. The like I have a friend who still has his like core friend group from high school, and they'll
Yeah.
hang out in like Discord pretty much like
Mhm.
all day, every day. It's crazy.
Yes, yes. We all know those friends. But I feel like of course like me being there like also affects what they talk about, but sometimes I feel like they have their own like other challenges, because it's like things do get kind of repetitive when you have the same group of friends over and over. So there's like pros
Yeah.
and cons to each type.
Yeah. I
Um
mean, yeah, I fully get that. What about you? What's
mhm.
your biggest regret?
Well, I can tell you concretely the last time I almost died because that was when I had like a very visceral moment of like, oh, f bombs, like this is it, right? So me and Yuhan, we were fishing in Santa Cruz, and like a sneaker wave hit us. So we were about to be like washed down a cliff.
Uh-huh.
Um, and it was very funny because like as Cool Beans, what I was alluding to is like when there's like no time at all to regret anything. You just have that, like, oh, like that's
You're
it
there. Yeah.
moment. Yeah. And then I was like, well, all that time I spent worrying about random stuff, that was not a good use of my time. So that was pretty much it. like So for me, it's mostly behavioral of like every time I'm worried or upset about something, like that was not a particular like that was unnecessary. Like that's my like takeaway at the time of that experience. Now I reflect back and go, well, like I could have enjoyed the annoyance. Like it's not like I don't want like push away every time I'm annoyed, right? And create
Uh-huh.
a life in which I'm never annoyed.
Ca
But then like that was most obvious. Like there was like I added a lot of suffering on top of my normal level of suffering because of the way I perceived the situation.
so what's the regret?
The regret was adding that layer of perception where in which I was thinking, oh, this wasn't quite right, or like I should have done this and that. Like the regret is the regret. You see?
Not really. I can understand if it's like you regret that your
Mhm.
default response to things is negativity. Is that like a
Mhm.
way to say it?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Or like there's like immediate like feelings of something is not quite right. Like there I'm always aiming for like once I get to this imaginary perfect situation, then I'll be happy and deferring happiness until that,
Ugh.
you
Okay.
know?
Yeah. So
Um
deferring happiness is a really important idea.
yeah.
Um,
And then Lewis is like, why don't you have a Discord? We
we
do have a
do.
Discord.
We do. It's in the description of this video, unless we didn't update it.
Yeah.
But which we also, also one thing I don't regret is we
Mhm.
just added a channel to it because we've been talking about this obviously off of stream.
Mhm.
And one of the things that we both want to do is be more in tune with what's going well, or what we like being present in what the positive things are in our life, being present with the positive things in our life. And so it's called a new channel called the Daily Stoke. And we're just going to say what we're stoked about every day. Feel
Mhm.
free to join in.
Yes, you are invited to share and we can join in being stoked with you.
Yeah. Hell yeah, dude.
Which is
Um,
yeah, this is what oddly relevant to our topic that we're talking about right now. I didn't even realize
yes.
that.
Yes,
Yeah.
it is. That's why I used it as a segue.
Mhm.
Kristen, can I ask, what about the oh, I lost it. You're in charge today.
Oh, okay.
I
Well,
I
Kubin
can't.
said happiness is a goal I thought was a terrible idea. Um, it's a trap, right? Because like if I aim for happiness, then I go back to that default mode of like, oh, if things are configured a certain way, then I will be happy. So we were talking about how deferring happiness is the default mode of human or like of survival in a way.
Yeah, maybe like the way I think about happiness as a goal is like it's super. In a lot of ways, it's super privileged to say, but like
Mhm.
you can just kind of choose to be happy in any individual moment, even when things are really crappy, because like happiness isn't a thing that you stack up a bunch of stuff to reach. It's
Mhm.
like a process of existing a certain way.
Yeah. So
Like,
this is where I present my most controversial idea of the reason why, one is not happy is because I'm blaming either myself or the situation or other people about, the causes of unhappiness, right? And like blame is like a mechanism of regret to some extent. Like, like I regret doing something, therefore I'm actually blaming myself. And the whole mechanism of blaming and shaming is the cause of unhappiness. Like that is the actual layer. And if we dissolve the entire layer and don't blame anyone or anything, then happiness will naturally arise. However, the pushback immediately is like, what about people who are doing bad stuff in the world? Do we blame them? Like, and how can people take responsibility if there is no blame or some sort of like remorse promoting
yeah,
mechanism?
that was where I was going.
Yeah, yeah. So, like, there is something else that we can do, but it's a lot more precise.
What is
And
it?
so instead of like blaming, like we see through, right? Like the reason why like people who are doing bad things in the world, oftentimes you hear about it, right? Their parents are really bad. Like it's like publicly famous. Where I'm like, oh, you are the richest person in the world, but man, your mom really sucks. Like there's like a whole like chain of causes there that go all the way back. Of course, there is still free will, but it's much more limited for each of us than we would like to think, because you inherit like every physical condition, right? This just goes back to like quantum mechanics and physics. Like you almost are inheriting every moment from the previous moment, and there are so many things like the moving mechanisms are already in place. Like now I'm in this moment yapping with you and trying to convince you of something, but
Yeah.
that was born from the previous moment, and to that extent my free will doesn't go back into the past and it is reborn in this moment.
I understand, I believe what you're saying.
Hmm.
I don't think that's my personal philosophy about dealing with bad actors in my life. But
Hmm.
that's probably not a surprise to you.
Yeah. No,
Like,
here's the thing. What like how you're feeling is the default, and also like I say all this stuff, but I default to that. Like so I think it makes sense for us to have this debate, because what I'm saying is like the ideal that is really hard to actually digest.
yeah, like I wouldn't have such a I wouldn't have such a strict separation of present Cameron and past Cameron.
Mhm.
Like, yes, in this moment, I have no control over the previous like 10 million moments that
Mhm.
accumulated to become me.
Mhm.
But I also like there's enough of me that participated in those moments that I'm not fully blameless for them. So
Mhm.
like
Yeah.
and so I like to think about things in terms of it's not an excuse, but it's a reason, right? Because
Mhm.
like where people get caught up in dealing with crappy things that people are actively doing to them or things that just happen to them is they like
Mhm.
don't like the idea of logicking out the chain of events
Mhm.
because in some ways it takes away the ownership or like blame isn't the word that I use because like culpability is like a little bit more precise than blame.
Yeah,
Like,
I like that. Mhm.
and so like somebody can be culpable of something while
Mhm.
also you acknowledge that there is a series of events that led them down this path. Like,
Mhm.
you know, they should still go to jail or whatever, but
Mhm.
like them being there isn't like there's it's very rarely that somebody is just cartoonishly flat and evil, right?
Mhm.
Like there's circumstances that make them that way. It doesn't change the fact that they're doing a thing that isn't good for society or for you or for whatever. But I do think it's important to be really honest about what is accumulating and like what are the factors in there, because if you ever want to actually change things in a meaningful way, you have to understand that nuance. And you're like, oh, if a kid regularly doesn't have enough money in their lunch account and we don't figure out how to like get them food every day, maybe bullying other kids for their lunch money becomes like a reasonable thing to them to expect, even though we know it's not a good thing, right?
Mhm. Yeah, the
Like there's a lot
system.
of scenarios like that.
Mhm. For sure. Oh, we have a lot of great comments. Let's address them and then we'll move on to the book.
Let's do it.
Okay. I know, I just like cut off a very nuanced discussion, but I'm also checking the time. Okay, so here. If we could pick happiness, David Foster Wallace probably wouldn't have killed himself. Oops, said that out loud in chat.
It's okay.
Sometimes
I'm not
you
scared of the algorithm.
okay. Sometimes you just got bad chemicals.
I agree with that.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that's where it gets nuanced. Like we do inherit our bodies. Like you're stuck with your body, and there's a lot of that involved in our psyche.
Yeah, I mean, going back to our discussion about tooth gains and physical fitness,
Hmm.
it is easier for some people to become jacked. Same thing applies to happiness. It is easier for some people to maintain a state of happiness. Like that's the other thing we talked about in our last video with John Green, not Hank Green. I got the name right. John Green's book, Everything is Tuberculosis. He talks about life is a process, but we experience events. Like
Hmm.
happiness is also a process. It's not like you achieve this state and you're there forever.
Hmm.
Although maybe the Buddhist chaplain in you might argue about enlightenment, but enlightenment and happiness are probably different. And so, like, for some people, it is really pushing a boulder up a hill to maintain a state of what other people would consider happy. And like, I
Hmm.
honestly, I consider myself in that camp. Like, I think, like, I got certified sad boy here because my default state is more melancholic. Part of that is like a self fulfilling prophecy, and then part of that, I just think that I feel that way.
Hmm. It's interesting that you said you think you feel that way.
Yeah, I think emotions are an incredibly I think emotions are an incredibly challenging thing to nail down. And I didn't start until a lot later in my life actually acknowledging them as useful signals for my body. And so, like, honestly, I don't think until I was like 24, 25, I cared about any other emotions other than locking in.
Hmm. So I'm glad you have an array to choose from besides locking in now.
Yeah.
You can do that when you know what's under your control and what is not. I think this is about culpability and free will.
Yeah. I mean, that's stoicism, right? It's identifying the parts of your life and your universe that you can manipulate and maneuver, and
Hmm.
everything else needs to wash over you like water off a duck's back.
Yeah. Social scoring with heavy surveillance.
I mean, that's
I
what we're
hope
about.
not.
We're about social scoring with heavy surveillance.
Yes, we want to score you high on free will and
No,
happiness.
the only social scores I care about is if you don't return grocery carts to the return spot, like I think you should not be allowed to be on planes.
Oh. Well, I do return it very consistently. But yeah, I never really got why people don't do that.
Because it's work that doesn't directly benefit them. It's like the clearest thing. Like there's no gain other than you are participating in society in a productive way.
Why is it that like certain cultures are so much better than in doing that than others?
Which
So
which cultures, Kristen? Which cultures are better at that?
so the United States is actually really good compared to where I grew up in returning the car. Like
Yeah.
so even though I know you're complaining about people here, but I'm like, oh, actually people are mostly really good, at least in California.
Yeah. The I mean, I have no idea about like the regional differences in returning grocery carts. I'm sure there's like an interesting study about that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I like think it's like there's a bunch of different categories of things that are like this. Like, I mean, we'll rile people up if we talk about reclining your airline seat, but the a lot of them don't recline anymore. Have you noticed that?
My friend just complained to me that his didn't recline for a
Yeah.
very long flight. Um, I think they just don't recline that much. Like a lot of them like give you like this much, and I'm like, okay, that doesn't really help. To the point where a lot of times I don't even bother anymore because I'm like, that's like 2 degrees.
I mean, I can't remember. Excuse me, I can't remember the last plane that I went on that had a recline, but I've been flying Spirit a lot, so
Oh,
yeah. But like, I think it without the
R.I.P.
recline. Well, no, I like Spirit. Like it's
You do?
like it's.
Okay.
I mean, it
Dispel
is
some
a.
stereotypes for me.
I mean, it's like a pool of humanity, and there's always something going on. But
Okay.
I don't know. It's like, I mean, the trick is if you can swing it. A lot of times, like the comfort seats or like the big seats they'll call them are like roughly the same price as like a Delta regular seat, depending on the lines. And so like
Oh.
you can just get the nicer seat for like a normal airline price, and
Mhm.
it's like you're in the context of Spirit, but like ultimately it's a pretty good experience, and it's free drinks.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Okay, this is a really good tip. We're not sponsored by Spirit
I
Airlines.
have no idea if Spirit sells. Oh, Spirit. That was a joke. I just got it. There are American Spirit cigarettes, but they are not sold by Spirit Airlines.
So funny. All right. Here, returning shopping carts could be used as the McDonald's price to know how society is. Actually, probably true. More convenient than the wallet dropping test.
Yeah, that's a whole process.
Hmm.
Um,
Well, speaking of societies, let's hop into a totally different one.
Kristen has backwards books.
Yes, I do. We're
Kristen,
looking
what
at
is this book? What are we doing here?
we're looking at the Death of Ivan Ilyich and Other Stories by Leo Tolstoy. We'll only be talking about the main story.
Yeah, it's a collection of multiple short stories. We just read this one because we're kind of lazy sometimes.
Oh, well, like you say that, but then actually, I was like, at first I thought it was only a few pages in this book, and I
Oh
was
no,
like,
it's
oh, dang,
it's like a
that's like a
short story.
quarter of this book. It is not that short of a story.
I mean, how many pages? It's like 70, right?
Yeah, and also the font is really small.
Yeah.
So although I was thinking, aha, I got to be a bit more lazy this week, it ended up taking quite a long time
No,
to
excuse me.
read through this
It is
book.
50 pages. It is like
Yeah.
50 pages
Hmm.
in kind of small font, but
Right.
there's like chapters in there, so you can like hit mile markers as you're reading it. So it's like a
Sure.
pretty I think it's a pretty achievable
Hmm.
short story read in a week.
Yeah. And then why did we pick this book? Let's remind people.
We're talking about death, we're talking about disease, we're talking about living a life of maybe regret and maybe not.
I thought it's because we saw it mentioned on Severance.
I consider that to be a sign from the universe.
Oh, okay.
And it's like I mean, a summary of the story. Spoiler
Mhm.
alert! It's 100+ years old. I don't feel bad for spoiling it.
Yeah.
A well-to-do man, Russia. He's a judge. He's a magistrate. He decides people's fates in the
Hmm.
Russian legal system in the late 1800s. He has done very well for himself. He's living like a solidly, let's say, like upper middle class Russian life,
Hmm.
and maybe lower aristocracy, like somewhere in there. He gets injured one day and then basically dies 3 months later. And he spends that time being like, oh no, I've lived a life and I think it might have been the wrong one.
Hmm.
Is that a fair summary?
Yeah, that was a great summary. So we're doing our opening statements.
Yeah.
So it's sometimes I crack myself. I'm like, what did I write as the opening statement? I wrote big yikes.
Big yikes.
Yeah, so this is a wake up call story.
You, sorry, continue.
Oh, okay. It's a modern day dark comedy, making fun of all the petty stuff that we get hung up on, and don't realize are not important before we die. So I realized that, like, as I was reading it, that it's actually meant to be a dark comedy of some kind.
What gave you that impression?
So I think at first, well, first of all, I was like, oh no, they have really long Russian names to remember. But then I realized that as you read more and more, like the small yikes turn into like really big yikes to the point of like, holy molies. Like this is more like somewhere between American Psycho and Arrested Development. Like the
Okay.
scenarios of how terrible everyone else or everyone is in this story and how they deal with their, friend and partner's death is so exaggerated that I think this was meant to be satire.
Okay.
So, and I feel like if you film this story, like that's how I would approach it. I'll film it like a, very exaggerated Arrested Development. You can't believe people are actually like that, sort of way.
Yeah.
What does your face mean?
So I think well, first of all, have you read like a bunch of have you read any other Russian kind of fiction?
So I feel like yes, like I've read a little bit of Dostoevsky, who is contemporary. So there's also like the whole like Russian writers and how they write things, and like I understand like they exactly they talk about sadness in a very visceral way, and that it's just like how they do it, and they're doing it straight, you know.
Yep.
Whereas like I'm interpreting it as like this is so comically terrible that I interpret as comedy. So there is like that layer of like personal interpretation going on. But I feel like it's sort of like how like in the Bible, like how Jesus was like, hey, like it's easier for a rich man to go through the camel sorry,
The
the eye
Eye
of
of
the
the Needle.
needle.
Yeah.
Yeah, than to go into heaven. Like that to me was meant to be like a really good stand-up bit. Like, but I think a lot of people would not interpret it that way. So I think like there's like this element of like, who knows? Like, due to the fact that Tolstoy is dead, like
Yeah.
you actually can't prove like whether I'm right or you're right. But
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think like, there is this like open interpretation here where like this could be really good comedy.
Right. I view this story like I'm not like a Russian fiction expert, but I'm fascinated by Russian culture, partially because I needed to study it while I was in the army because that was like
Oh.
the near peer culture in turn. Like the army calls people that like would be a very painful war to fight near peers because we like imagining we're better than everybody else,
Mhm.
and so as a kid, I
Mhm.
was Soviet Union, mostly actually through my grandfather and dad because like they like war stuff, and that was obviously the big bad in most media in kind of like the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. And so my grandfather actually, so he was a chemist and he was contracted to go teach former Soviet bloc chemists about like a chemical process that he had invented. And so
Mm.
he had some really cool stories of, you know, visiting the stands and all that. But like, I like Russian culture because it is like literature in a lot of ways is like fundamentally like dry and straight.
Mhm.
And I do agree that there's like elements of comedy in it,
Mhm.
but it's not like, hey, read this through the lens of comedy. Like this story is funny because it's so serious, right? And so
Yeah.
like the thread, yeah, Colbein's 100% right. Old people love World War II. It's I mean it is like one of the last great straight narratives that is uncomplex. It's a like in the modern, postmodern, metamodern framework, like
Mhm.
modern stories are straightforward. They got a good guy and a bad guy. It's Top Gun, Tom Cruise is winning, right? And
Mhm.
like postmodern is when people get like there's regret in winning sometimes, right?
Yeah, some
And so
nuance.
like World War II is a narrative that a lot of people really cling on to as like, hey,
Mhm.
straightforward, you know,
Mhm.
good guys and bad guys.
Yeah.
But
So
anyway,
blanketly, like, what did they teach you about Russian culture? I know it sucks because I'm asking you to summarize a very nuanced culture in like a few lines, but overall, what was the net impression?
I mean, nobody's like teaching you about Russian culture. It's like, hey, these are Russian weapon systems. This is how they fight. This is like their logistical chain. One interesting thing about like the Russian military is they don't have a professional non-commissioned officer class, like a sergeant class.
Mhm.
And so, one of the reasons that the U.S. military has such a continuity of skill and experience is because the NCO Corps is in for like 20 years,
Mhm.
and like the Russian military doesn't have like the equivalent. So a lot of times their small units don't necessarily operate with the same level of professionalism. Kind of
Oh.
propaganda, but also plays out in units. But
So
so
does
like
non-commissioned mean like a salaried job? Actually, I never knew what that meant.
so non-commissioned basically just means not a traditional officer. It's kind of like a
Mm.
self-referential definition. And so, like, they're an officer in the sense that they're a higher rank than the rank and file privates.
Mhm.
But, like, in order to be a military officer, you have to have a college degree. You have to, you know, have gone through specific training pipelines. And so
Mhm.
it's like, I don't know, it's maybe like the definition of like being like a technician versus an engineer. It's not a perfect comparison because
Mm.
there's implying a difference in status or skill level or whatever. But I would think of it as like just different things.
Mm. Okay. And you were commissioned.
Yes, I was a commissioned officer, got out as a captain.
Mhm.
And so I did my time as a second lieutenant, first lieutenant, and then got out as a captain. But so what I know
Why
from
do we
my
ever call you Captain Cameron on Forecaster?
so I'd be Captain Armstrong, but yeah,
Oh, okay.
the yeah. But so what I've learned because like I've read a bunch like at various times in my life I've gone deep on like the big Russian like works, poetry as well,
Mm.
and like there's just a sense of like it is just a different way of viewing the world than Americans. It's
Mhm.
a lot more matter of fact. It's a lot more, hey, misery is endemic to this, and we need to look at this straight on. And it's like
Mhm.
it's a cultural acceptance of a lot of things outside of your control by
Mhm.
default.
Mhm.
Some of that is like the result of historical like events happening there. Some of it's kind of like grassroots, just cultural identity, but it is not an optimistic culture. And that doesn't mean it's like a worse culture. It's just
Mhm.
not optimistic by default like Americans are.
Yeah, and specific to Tolstoy, so back to the Wikipedia rabbit hole, right? Like you were telling me that oh, this is actually one of his later works, after he had his spiritual awakening,
Yeah.
and I feel like that's why he wrote this story the way he did, as like a his message, right? Of like, hey, all you like, rich, well-to-do people who are not reflecting on what you're doing. Like this is an example of like a Christmas Carol, like a ghost of the Christmas past sort of situation, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, so I feel like for me, I was viewing it from like a spiritual religious lens, since that's the version of Tolstoy you're getting from this book.
Yeah, it's a big reflection on what was the point,
Mm-hmm.
which I mean, arguably was a huge jump in thinking in Russian literature, because like there's a ton of stuff that's like, hey, stuff is bad and you still have to live your life anyway, and like
Mm-hmm.
adding on this like appendix of, oh, but maybe we could do it in a, like we could experience it in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
For me is like a really important question.
Yeah, and I didn't realize he had such a huge influence on Gandhi, Mahatma Gandhi.
Oh, that's
Um,
interesting. I didn't know about that.
yeah, they like Mahatma Gandhi when he was young wrote to Tolstoy,
Oh,
and
that's
then
dope.
Tolstoy was the one who was promoting the idea of non-harm and like non-violent protesting.
Hmm.
So I had no idea that that actually was the origin, and that's the thread of goodness that came from his writing.
Interesting.
Because
That probably,
he had a bit of a miserable life.
I mean, yeah. You want to share?
Well, again, I mean, this is like Wikipedia level depth of like
Yeah.
knowledge, right?
I mean,
But
that's
like
way
he
more
came
depth
from
than
a,
most people have.
I suppose. So he came from aristocratic origins. So he wasn't like super poor or anything. But then he ended up in the military as well because he had crippling gambling debts.
Hell yeah.
And I was like,
Classic
oh,
soldier story.
exactly. So nothing much has changed. And then he got married and did all of that. As was usual at the time. But then it's sort of like he was not in a happy marriage, which is maybe evident by some of his like more famous stories.
Yeah.
And apparently when he like experienced his spiritual awakening, which is pretty like um pantheist in a way, because he references like Buddha and Jesus as like coherently, like there is this whole like non-violence and like care for humanity that we should have, that apparently was upsetting to his wife as well,
Mm.
who's just pretty much been like managing the entire household and looking after everything, and then you have a person who's like trying to be like a spiritual I think he was also trying to be quite what's that word, not having sex, wow,
Abstinent?
yeah, abstinent at the same time.
Yeah.
Celibate, that's the word. So
Mm.
I feel like he, that's the reality, is that you have a spiritual awakening. Those of you around who are to look after you are probably pretty much like, what the heck is going on?
Mhm.
So in light of all that, I can see like that's why he was I think in the end he almost renounced his stories too, like his like War and Peace and Anna Karenina. He was like, oh, these are not important. Like this story is way more important.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So, well, with that, let's move on to the idea of obituaries and funerals. So,
Okay.
I was thinking when I was sending you like what I sent you through chat last night, I was or like the night before, I was thinking, is this narcissism to its max? Because in the beginning of the story, you read about like Ivan's like funeral obituary situation, right? And
Yeah.
I immediately went to ChatGPT to be like, can you write my obituary?
Yeah.
And when I went
Honestly,
to
strange move in my opinion.
um because well, first of all, I was actually curious whether there's enough material about me online for it to do that.
Uh-huh.
So, and I was like, okay, actually, it was really comprehensive. So I was like, okay, like that saves someone some time in writing obituary. Though one of my friend wanted to write mine, so I need to not have AI take her out of a job. But um, but I thought it was a really good way for me to reflect, like, which I do often, is like, if I keel over tomorrow, like, is it good enough, or like, did I accomplish what I want to accomplish? I think the issue with the whole like ChatGPT obituary is that it's so focused on like external stuff that I've shown off or like talked about online, and not about relationships.
Uh-huh.
Because like, of course, like ChatGPT doesn't know about my relationships yet, hopefully. And like that I felt was missing in the obituary. And like in terms of a funeral, it decided that I wanted a TED Talk / meditation retreat, and then I was annoyed by how accurate that is. but but like that has always been really important to me, is that like, when I keel over, like the funeral has to be the best party ever, and I will like haunt as a ghost to make sure that it is good,
Why?
because I want all my friends to get to know each other, because of the whole
Why?
isolation situation that you were talking about earlier. Because like, like I feel like I have many friends who don't know each other, and they're also like in smaller friend circles. So it'll be good if like the funeral can be an excuse for party. And I usually sometimes in the past, when I have more energy, I usually plan my birthdays that way too. I'll invite like, people from different circles, so we have a
Yeah.
reason to mingle. Because I think ultimately right now, as especially post COVID, there's not enough events and planning for people to get to know each other. And then if you don't have the more like connector types plan things, the people who are more like non-connecting, which again, no judgment, it's just a different like personality, like
Yeah.
people will never get together. So like having a funeral or like a birthday party or whatever is usually the reason to get together. Like even though I don't, it's fine, I don't really need to celebrate my birthday or whatever, but it's a good excuse.
We're so different, Kristen. We're
Yes,
so
that's the
unbelievably
point, the
different.
point.
Like everything that you've just said is so foreign to me that I don't
Mhm.
even know how to respond.
Right? I that's the whole point, is that like I don't think you would be well, I mean, I assume. I don't think you would enjoy doing the people connector role because it's extremely exhausting. Like I feel like I do it naturally. Like, Yuhan calls me actually a secret social butterfly, but I also prefer to hide in the little meditation cave that is currently under the weather pod next to me. But like I feel like because I am privileged in this way, it's important for me to share social connections with other people.
Uh-huh.
And I've met people who are like me too. Like I've benefited from like friends who are like really good connectors, and they introduce me to other people and stuff like that. So there is like a camp of us who do this. And I feel like, there it's just so hard otherwise for some people to meet other people if no one introduces anybody.
So my question is, and I know I just said earlier that my biggest regret is not investing in relationships, but I think it's investing in a different way than what you
Mhm.
mean. Like,
Mhm.
I don't know, I hear all that and I'm just kind of like, what's the point?
To
Like
enjoy experience. So here's the thing: if you don't want to get to know people, like then you should do your own thing. But
yeah.
like for me to mediate enjoyment, and if it happens to be social connections and friendship or whatever, then it is much easier for me to at least make sure people are in the same place, or else you won't get to know each other.
I guess that makes sense. I just don't feel like super satisfied with the ant. Like there's not like a thing that you said that made it click for me, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And it's probably a skill issue on my part. It's just like the like I can think of knowing a bunch of people as like a practical thing. I like have had individual relationships where I'm like, "Oh, I like engaging with this person." I've
Mhm.
been on kind of like group type trips where you're just kind of like doing something as a herd and like, get
It's so
some
funny because
value.
I don't actually like those.
Sure, but like how is that different than what you're talking about though?
Mm, I think because like parties are more short. Like I think multi-day trips are really hard. Like I've only gone on a few of those with friends, and like they have to be really good
Well,
friends.
then call it a day trip. Is that the same
Yeah.
thing?
Yes. I think it also depends on the type of thing. So one thing that's really controversial is like taking friends hiking or taking friends foraging is something I'm really much more like about nowadays because of personal experience. Because like like for hiking, as you know, we've talked about this a little bit. Like if you hike at different speeds, like super awkward because now everyone is stuck to the slowest person speed.
Yeah, I mean,
So
I consider hiking a fundamentally solo
solo
activity, but
activity.
that's like
Yeah,
my
yeah,
my view of
yeah.
the world.
Exactly. And then like with yeah, and with foraging as well, I think cool beans you appreciate this. I feel like it's similar to the shopping cart situation. It is very hard for me to like teach the spirit of not taking too much to people who don't perceive it that way. who don't perceive nature as not something like a bounty for which you like, extract maximally,
Yeah.
whereas like, if it's like a casual party or whatever where we like do a potluck or something like that usually is very nice. And I feel like, you know, very much like my friends invite me to their parties, like, and I do the same sort of thing. So I feel like, again, it only makes sense if everybody enjoys it and wants to go out. And like, it's just so much easier if I happen to have a bunch of friends for me to organize.
Gotcha. Okay.
Mhm. It's
So
just a
so
gift
strange.
and you can take it or leave it.
Yeah. No, it's so strange to me. Can I ask you something
Like, what
about?
what is strange about it? Is it like the strangeness of like me enjoying it, or the strangeness of it being a thing, or something else?
I mean, like, to be fair, I'm a person that like hears the context of like a party type event, and it's very much squarely in the like, okay, at best it's a chore, usually it's a nightmare type scenario for me.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, and so like that's obviously a big part of it. But
Mhm.
just like I can't imagine 10 different people that I could get into one spot that I'm like, I'd like to interact with all of these people at roughly at the same time.
Oh.
Like, like that's crazy to me.
Oh.
And it's not like, I don't know. I guess I just think about in terms of like mixes of people.
Mhm. It's a very delicate thing. It's almost like planning like wedding party tables. There are certain people where I'm like, yeah, those are not mixing. But like, you have to know each person well enough to be like, okay, proximally, this is the Venn diagram, and then you have to do the host thing of like, do you know who blah blah blah, and then you can talk about blah blah blah, and then you shove them together, and then you go to the next party or like the next pair.
Sounds like a nightmare. I'm being real. Like if two, the other thing is like, it's different if it's like if you are opting in to go to an event, I feel
Mhm.
like you have a responsibility to be like a good participant, even if you think the person next to you is a piece of crap.
Yes, yes,
And
and then I feel all my friends meet this baseline
right,
criteria. I wouldn't invite them, right?
right.
Yeah, but like, here's the thing: like in the past, like few years, I don't think I plan as many too because of like COVID and like again, like I feel tired too. It's not like this is like zero. Like some people like maximally enjoy it. I can see that they are like energized by planning. I'm like, no, no, no. Like it depletes my battery to plan these things.
Yeah,
But I like the outcome of it, and
got
I
it.
can be like, like I feel like me and some of my friends' goals, we're just trying to meld everyone into one bigger amoeba.
For to what end?
So that, like you can enjoy it. If you want to be part of this amoeba.
Like, like it's okay if the answer is just because I like that kind of thing.
Mhm.
Because like what I mostly try to do is try to find where our fundamental assumptions differ. Right.
Right, right. So, like, I enjoy being friends with you, right?
Yeah.
And then we wouldn't have met if we didn't have, like, Farcaster or whatever.
Right.
Like, imagine, like, some of our friends meeting their friends, and then we don't know. It's, like, somewhat random who's gonna match with who, and you can increase the likelihood.
I don't know. It just feels like a lot of work for what?
For fun. Like, that's the thing. Like, if you don't enjoy it, which a lot of people don't, like, don't do it. Like, that just, like, torturing yourself for the to benefit others is not great.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Can I ask you, because I wanted to ask a little bit more about the story.
Oh, yeah.
There's a
We're
big
teasing
theme
it.
in there of like there's a big theme in there of work as a distraction.
Mm.
Did you have a gut reaction to that?
So the work that this Ivan person did was like a bureaucrat, right?
Yeah,
Like there
which
was
is kind of
like
like
this
the
is the part.
default job in
Yeah,
like that kind of society.
right, right. And this is the part where it was very much like a Patrick Bateman American Psycho situation, right? Because he was like
Really?
comparing himself to his peers. Like it might as well just start talking about Paul Allen and business cards at some points,
Yeah.
And I think it showed. The whole point is to contrast, like, oh my gosh, this man was so petty and so worried about like getting into the right sinecure, I think is the word. Like it's almost like a nepotism sort of thing. Like you get into a cushy, like middle rank judge job, and then you're set for life. And like all his worries were for naught as he was on his deathbed, and he was really well. This I think is a bit of a rosy picture painting thing, but he was like really admiring the life of the peasant who was looking after him and the purity and the simplicity of that person's life.
So I interpreted that whole section very differently from you. Like
Oh, okay.
I've read, so for context, he is a person that kind of like goes to not top tier like schools or pipelines, but he's like a very established, like coming from where he came from, he like does well, and he does well enough to trade that up into a promotion. He does well enough
Mhm,
to trade that into a promotion,
mhm,
but it's not like the path to be a titan of Wall Street. It is like even at its like apex, he's like the big wig in a like relatively medium sized town.
mhm,
And so like for me, the context of it all isn't that, hey, this is a commentary on like American exceptionalism and business tycoons and like being at the top of the stratosphere and pure keeping up with the Joneses, although there is like a big element of comparing yourself to other people in the like
mhm,
relative sense,
mhm,
because he's not looking at like the leaders of Russia and being like, I'm trying to get into that sphere. He's like, hey, what is like the next A minus I can get?
mhm.
Because even at his peak, he's still struggling with like paying for the stuff that he wants to pay for, which is just like a little bit nicer desk and chairs and house and apartments. And
Yeah,
so
there was a bit of a keeping up with the Jonases situation going on.
yeah, but like not in the same way that a 80s excess novel I think comes across, because that's very much like this is a group of people that is fundamentally different from most people.
Mhm.
I think for like Tolstoy's character here, it's like a person who's doing better than most other people, but it's still a person, if that makes sense. He's like definitely not a peasant, but he's definitely
Mhm.
not like a Richie Rich.
Yes, like a middle class person given the communist situation.
Yeah, so for lack of better phrasing. And so for me, that makes this like, I mean, I kind of read parts of this as like a horror story, right?
Yes, yeah, same here.
And
Like
so like
this could be this is you kind of
yeah,
like.
like as a person that didn't touch anything to do with like Ivy League or anything like that my entire, like I didn't know anybody that had gone to like an Ivy League school growing up.
Mhm,
And then after the army, I had the good fortune to get into Harvard Business School, and like
mhm.
I see like I know a ton of different versions of this person, and I know you do too. And so like going to UCLA, getting your PhD, there's different
USC.
versions of the
That
same
was
story.
that was a sin you just committed because you
Oh,
mixed up
oh,
the
USC. I'm
rival
so sorry.
schools.
USC. I'm so sorry. My bad. Um, but so like knowing so many different versions of this story and
Mhm.
knowing that a lot of them aren't like, it's really easy to be like Patrick Bateman. He's like a crazy
I think this is
murderer.
where like our views like don't match up. I think that Patrick Bateman is actually an everyman story.
That's insane to me.
I think we are like when we're feeling a little bit narcissistic, we're not that far from Patrick Bateman. So that's why I saw it as a equivalent.
Kristen, Patrick Bateman worked at like a top Wall Street
Yeah, but
firm,
I mean
eating at
he's
$1,000 a meal restaurants. Like,
right. But like it's just sure the economic amounts are different, but it's about externalizing self-worth.
I mean, like in terms of like all stories about humans are about humans, yeah. But I think like
Yeah.
the details of the story really change it.
I think it goes back to like how like the range of experiences and how we interpret them. I see it as much more squashed, and you see
Yeah.
it as more wide.
Like I th- I think the Patrick Bateman, like, and we can disagree on this obviously, but like a Patrick Bateman mentality of the world is a
Mhm.
very different thing than like even the mayor of like a town in Arkansas. It's like a very different level of success, and the way that you move through the world is also very different.
I see it as a spectrum.
Of course it's a spectrum, but a spectrum implies there's differences. Um,
Oh, hmm. I don't think so. I think I see it as like a range in a spectrum and not really implied difference unless you're talking about like extreme ends of each one. But anyway, back to your point
Well,
about
okay, no, now I wanna drill down on this because
mhm.
if there is no difference, how do you write a class story ever?
Mm, I think it's very tricky. I think fundamentally, here's the thing, right? Yeah, it's like, do I relate to the richest person in the world? Probably not. But I see the flaws of him as like a version of my flaws. Like, that's why like there is a relatability, even though there is not. And I'm sure he doesn't want to relate to me, so it's fine.
Yeah, I part of me feels that that's like I can understand like I would say, "Hey, it's narcissistic to feel that," but it's also narcissistic to deny it exists. You know what I
Mhm.
mean?
Mhm.
And so but for me, like my interpretation of this story, the position really matters,
Mhm.
uh, because the amount of like to me, the amount of success that you achieve relative to whatever you're doing, uh, like there's a let me say it a different way. There's a bajillion stories about how becoming rich and famous, like people regret that.
Ah, I see.
And
Yeah,
then there's
I
a
see.
bajillion stories about how crappy it is to like stay poor forever, right? But there's
Mhm.
like, redeeming qualities to it.
Mhm.
There's not that many stories where you have a like respectable, moderate amount of success
Mhm.
where you're going about doing all the right things in like this like everyday kind of mentality in terms of like whatever your version of the American dream is
Mhm.
and the Russian dream. And even though you do this like delicate middle path of like, oh, you're not like greed, avarice, excess, but also you've pulled yourself up by your bootstraps, like even in this middle ground, there's a way to royally screw it up. And
Mhm.
that's what's really fascinating to me about this.
So I feel like there's the financial aspects and also the relational aspects, right?
Sure.
Because and I feel kind of bad for Ivan because like, his wife hating him and stuff like that. I don't think he could have done anything about it.
I I,
And
I have opinions, but continue.
oh, really? Okay. I would love to hear because when maybe when I read the story, I felt like, maybe a reflection of Tolstoy's life, but it felt as though like the wife just started off not liking him and ended up not liking him, and there wasn't much he could have done about that. His relationship with his son, like, that could have been something that he could have done more about, and, like, towards the end, that got a little bit better. But I thought that there was also this, like, stark contrast where he was so busy doing his career stuff that it didn't feel like he did very much with relationships. I think he played a lot of, Screw, which is some kind
Poker.
of poker variant.
Yeah.
And maybe that's his, like, social outlet or something, but, like, it it's almost like people who are, like, super into, like, you know, gambling or board games or whatever, they got really into the craft of the thing, but the relationship they would build from that was not apparent.
Wait, sorry. I thought you were going one way and then there's a different thing that we're talking about. What is this poker thing?
Oh, just that, like, I was trying to think, like, what else in his regrets before death by what he could have done better, right?
Yeah.
And it seemed like towards the end, like spoiler alert, I think he really regretted not having good relationships. Is that the net impression that you got?
Kind of. I I got the sense that
Mhm.
he had a revelation that all the things that he spent his time on weren't that meaningful to him. The alternative isn't very clear to me. I think that
Mhm.
there's hints at it in terms of the relationship with his son, the relationship with one of his like servants,
Mhm.
who he just like appreciated in honestly kind of a patronizing way because there's like an
Yeah.
archetype of like a simple, pure, like
Mhm.
peasant type figure, which is just patronizing.
Mhm.
But as a representative of, oh, there's a way to live your life free of a lot of this accoutrement of success and fake status. I
Mhm.
get it as like a device. Um,
So
but
it's like he was trying to say the word forgive,
yeah,
on his deathbed. And I think it's left a little bit unclear or like into open interpretation by the reader as to what, like, who or what is being forgiven here.
Yeah.
But it seemed like that was the moment of release for him, or surrender.
What do you think he was? What do you think that moment means?
I think it's self-forgiveness, actually. I think he
Okay.
was going through the whole moment of like, I, regret like all the things that I've done that were not a good use of my time, right? But like he was able to forgive himself for everything. And also like, probably forgive him like the resentment he has for his wife and all that kind of stuff as well.
Okay.
I'm
Interesting.
not sure, actually.
Yeah. I don't know if there's a right answer.
Yeah.
The I kind of think that there is I would lean it more towards a forgive me, because like me putting
Ah.
myself in his shoes,
Mhm.
having lived versions of this life at various points in my life, like I think it's a forgive me for not being the person in a relationship that like I kind of think would have been a better way to do it. I also think there's an element of I forgive you for being shitty, but that's like for his own benefit. Because okay, so
To the
here's
wife,
like an
right?
what was that?
To the wife.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like I think obviously marrying somebody that you don't actually care about, or like that you don't really have a complete understanding of like how you care about them,
Mhm.
both parties are at fault. There is a overall societal dynamic in there, in that like there's inherent power imbalances between men and women. Although like
Mhm.
some aspects of Russian culture, we're a lot more progressive with that.
Right, right. This book did not pass the Bechdel test by any
No, and
means.
so like Tolstoy wrote a lot of women as like very flat and like as set pieces, not as people, like
Yeah.
in general. And so like there's another short story in this collection, like in the classic old style of like creeping on 17-year-old girls, which again is
Oh.
like there's a lot of people didn't used to live that long, so there's like ways to understand why that would happen, even if like clearly we don't think that's cool today. But like in all of those places that people that characters like that exist,
Mhm.
there is a flat perspective about the motivations of women characters in a lot of his stories, right? And it's not
Mhm.
like he just cared more about what men think. And that's kind of a default male state, is like, I care about what men think and how they're thinking about things, and I don't really care about women.
Mhm.
And so like, it's important, I think, to read this story through that
Oh,
lens.
someone
But
should rewrite this story from the lens of the wife.
I mean, go for it. The, but like the work piece itself is really, really interesting,
Mhm.
because like, it's not just that he's like working and he's like you do work, and it's not necessarily, hey, I am like missing sight of the big picture for the work. He is proactively at different parts of the book leaning into work as a way
Mhm.
to not deal with the like
I did not notice that.
insurmountable in the insurmountable facts of his life.
Oh.
So like when he knows he's dying pretty early in the diagnosis. You know what I mean?
You're right. Yeah.
And so
Hmm.
like this really hits home to me, because
Mhm.
I get a lot of sense of self-worth from the things that I do.
Mhm.
Men in general, I think, sometimes naturally do this, but for the most part are socialized to only perceive their value through the things that they produce. I'm
Mhm.
not taking that away from like women, but like as a dude that has lived a dude life in America, like grew up in
Mhm.
America, nobody cares about how you feel. They care about what you do and what value you're bringing to that context.
Mhm.
And I think there's good parts to that, but I also think that there's like a fundamental misalignment in meaning if that's all you think about. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? And so in this context, he gets his entire sense of self-worth from his job,
Mhm.
explicitly at the expense of his relationship at points. Like whenever he has a fight, he works harder at his job, right?
Mhm.
Like that's like a hallmark of their domestic life. I do that. I do that all the time because it's way easier to focus on the thing that you're good at, the thing that continually rewards you for performing at, and like shutting out, compartmentalizing these other pieces so that you can continue to get the dopamine bursts of, hey, external system is telling me I'm doing a good job.
Right.
And like as it progresses and it becomes clearer and clearer that like this job part is a futile thing, he still leans into it further until he like physically can't anymore and he starts getting bad at the job. And then like when he gets bad at the job, he starts being like, dang it, I can't even be good at this thing anymore. So I guess I'll just like sit in this sickness. And so like nobody says that shit.
So Cameron, we're dying.
We are dying. That's the other thing is like he's been dying this whole time, even before this illness, right?
So does it come back down to relationships then?
I don't think so. I think I mean, actually, what do you mean? I don't want to disagree with you without hearing what you mean by relationships.
Well, you had mentioned that, like, you know, he spent his time on his work instead of relationships. So I'm wondering, like, okay, so what is the moral that we all take away from this story? Like, to me, it reemphasizes the importance of enjoyment of your experiences beyond work. So it be it relationships or like spiritual pursuits or whatever you want, but at least like you have to not personally, you have to not regret it. And it could be work. Maybe you would like, you know, be on your deathbed and be like, yes, I accomplished the work. And that's also fine actually.
Yeah.
But just don't be regretting it. So for you, what is that about?
It's a continual pursuit of stuff that I just like doing. You know, like the tricky part. I mean, we've been talking about kind of a crisis of meaning in, you know, our lives, societal lives, especially like with the collapse of religion. You like people used to be able to be like, hey, I'm doing the right thing because I'm following, you know, these 10 commandments or whatever, like the scripture. A lot of people don't like abide by that anymore. And so you got to construct your own meaning. Some people get it by joining cults. Other people get it by whittling wood. And that's not like a diminutive like thing about whittling wood. And so we live in a world where you got to like make money and, you know, pay for things. You can't just, you know, I mean, I guess you can live in the woods, but most people cannot. And there's like constraints on our life. And so for me, this is like a tale of really reminding yourself to balance the, like to figure out what you actually want to default to. Because whatever you end up defaulting to is how you spend your time is how you spend your life. And he spent his time doing this like work thing that he could, you know, check off, like he could hit checkpoints on and get a lot of value in one little facet of his life. But it clearly wasn't enough for these other pieces. Maybe a better relationship with his like wife and children would have helped. Maybe him learning how to, you know, play an instrument would have helped. I think it's really hard to say. Tolstoy has kind of an opinion about it, but like for me, it's really like none of it actually matters. And so you have to just do the stuff that generally lets you feel good about getting through the different hours of your day, which is just a different way of saying what you said.
I think it's slightly different, like in a good way. Like it's a wider definition. So, I think like it really points to the fact that you and I differ maybe in this way. Like I think I use creative pursuits as an excuse to build relationships. Actually, like I don't like creativity.
What?
I know, I know.
What?
Yeah.
Yo, we're so different.
Yeah, which is okay.
Yeah, no, I just didn't.
Yeah.
Like, I care about context so much.
About why my motivation is slightly different. Like, the objective value. I think I also annoyed Lewis with this discussion too. Like, who also is like, what? Like, why aren't you measuring your workouts? I'm like, no, but the whole point of it is it's much more subjective to me sometimes. So I think that's also why it's hard for me to have KPIs because I'm looking for something a lot more nebulous. Which is fine. But yeah,
Sure.
like
But
speaking of,
well,
oh,
can I ask one more
well,
thing?
we actually have to rate the book too. I forgot.
Yeah, I know. We'll we'll get there. Like Russian literature in a lot of ways is like very fatalist, right? Like it's not quite
Mhm.
nihilism, although there's like elements of fatalism, nihilism that like intermingle.
Mhm.
We both care about our physical health a lot.
Mhm.
Like, how do you think about like fitness, staying like maybe in shape, whatever that means to you, but like living a healthy life in the context of like this problem of we're dying?
Yeah, how do you gracefully age? Is how I would phrase it.
I mean, like, what's the point? Is my question.
To be healthy.
Yeah.
I think fundamentally it goes back to what feels good.
Okay.
Right. And like I am looking after future Kristen because it's not gonna feel good to be, crippled or whatever. So there is a delay, I think. That's the annoying part, is that there's so much deferred gratification for being fit.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of it is preventing decline in reality, especially as we get past our 30s, right?
Hmm.
So like to me it is like, how can I maintain this physical form for as long as possible so that I'm not a burden onto my loved ones? Because if you get sick, actually it sucks for everyone else around you. Like you just get sick and die, and that's actually fine. So
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
maintenance of that is
Uh,
important.
Another way to not be a burden is to not have relationships, Kristen.
Just not. But that's the fun part for some people.
If another question.
Hmm.
If relationships are fun for you,
Hmm.
doesn't that make it fundamentally selfish for you to cultivate relationships?
Yes, and that is okay.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, like I think
Logically
that's
consistent.
also, hmm?
It's
Yeah.
logically consistent. I like that.
Yes. Though as you and I have discussed, it is okay also to not be logically consistent.
I'm not going to endorse that.
Yeah, triggers the heck out of you.
Yeah.
What do we rate this book? I do rate it as a C. However, I think the format needs to change for a lot of people. I'm not sure if it's that easy to read. And I wonder if it should be like a visual format or comic book or something. Like that might be a lot more accessible for a lot of people.
Okay, so quick recap. We have a
Mhm.
triple C rating system
Oh
here.
yeah.
1C from Cameron, 1C from Kristen, 1C from chat. Just comment on the video below and let us know if you would recommend this to somebody. Put a C, make a funny face, make a dumb comment, doesn't matter. That's how we're going to vote. I will give this a C, and part of that recommendation is because it's not accessible.
Mm.
I don't think everybody okay, no, that's not what I was saying. I don't think truth has to be accessible. I don't think revelation can be spoon-fed to you. I think, it depends on the context, circumstance, but like nobody cares about a fundamental truth of the world that somebody pre-chewed and spit into their mouth like a baby bird.
Regurgitated truth.
Yeah. Like, yes, some things that are fundamentally true about people are like trite and a trope and like overused, whatever, but it's stuck around because it's like a real thing, even if you've heard it since you were 5 years old watching a cartoon.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, I don't think 18-year-old Cameron could have read this and really been like, "Oh wow, this changed my life." I think I would have read it and been like, "Man, getting old is gonna suck," and then moved on with my day and like, shotgun a beer or whatever. And
Yeah.
so like 32-year-old Cameron reads this and I'm like squarely at the cusp of the like, oh, I could see myself falling off a ladder and dislodging my kidney and almost dying as a result of it, because like bad things have happened to me, right? I
Mhm.
broke my foot. I've hurt my back. I've done all these things. And so like the gift of understanding your mortality, like I think you have to earn it in some ways. Not saying that people can't understand it or think they understand it. I know I wouldn't have if if it'd been fed to me on a silver platter. And so
Great.
in that way, like maybe they make a manga out of this. Maybe that helps a bunch of people, and like that would be a net good thing. I also think that like
Well, the whole point of this show is for us to be the manga, right? Like maybe
Yeah.
now people will want to read the book, and
I
once you
mean,
discover this video,
we got like a multi meaning with this, right? Like we know a bunch of people aren't gonna, do the work, right? Just like a bunch of people will watch Sam Sulek in his bodybuilding videos, and they're not gonna go to the gym, right? And I think that's okay. It's not like a criticism of the group of people, but I also want part of our show to be like, oh, these people that like I value their opinion, I trust what they do. Maybe they're kind of like entertaining and smart. Like I really do want to get some group of people to be like, man, maybe I will read this because like all of the things that we're experiencing, like you can get the facts about stupid easy with like chatbots, right? Like you can get a vibe from shows like this, but you can't experience the experience without going through the experience. And the
right? Yeah.
experience the experience of like reading this, putting it down, sitting with something, and then coming back to it later, like that's what's meaningful about this. It's not, hey, a dude got hurt and then died and then felt bad about it. It's like
Right, that won't be
living
the
it.
ChatGPT summary of the
Yeah.
book, right?
It-
Yeah, I agree. I feel like it is so much like for me meaningful to like keep track of all the Russian names and to like digest the sentences in the book rather than to read the ChatGPT summary of it. And it's a very simple story.
yeah, I mean, yeah, it is definitely it it is disarming in its straightforwardness.
Yeah,
My favorite.
and
Oh, go ahead.
being able to tell this very like straightforward story arc with enough interesting detail is craft.
Yeah, it's especially as a translation. Shout out to the translator. Kristen, I think my favorite part about this whole process of reading this short story is, do you remember the scene in Severance? Like the context that they like brought it up in?
Yeah, so they were the main character and his wife. It's just a flashback. They're sitting by side, and they were donating blood or something like that. And then they were talking about their respective interests or what they were teaching or something like that, right? Because they were both professors. And
Okay, so
he was teaching some more direct war related book or something. Am I misremembering?
so I don't remember it from that scene. It might be in that scene. I'm not sure. I remember it when they go into the wife's like prison cell bedroom thing.
Oh, you remember from a different part. Okay, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's a book on her shelf. And so her prison guard doctor comes in. He sees that that's a book that like she'd been reading, and he picks it up and he's just like, "The Death of Ivan Ilyich. Let me guess, he dies at the end." And then you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then I think she smacks him in the face with a chair. Like I could be misremembering that part.
I will not say it in case this is too much of a spoiler. There may or may not be a chair that was smacked over the head.
Okay, well, let's just say spoiler alert. I'll edit that later. And so so him trash talking this book in that scene is really, really fascinating because he's right. He does die at the end, but the point isn't that he dies. The point is that he reflects on his life and how everything that he's been doing was the wrong thing. And so like that makes that scene so powerful for me, is like this dude who is fundamentally doing the wrong thing doesn't get it.
Yeah, and I think that's mirrored in the flashback with Mark, where he was also sort of making fun of the book.
Oh, interesting. I'll have to check that out then.
Well, let's see. Maybe I misremembered the whole scene. So
Could be.
yeah. But yes. So let us know if you enjoy the book also.
Incredible.
All right. So, and then we have our next book, which we will talk about in 2 weeks' time because Cameron's traveling.
I got it. Keep talking. Keep talking. Got the energy.
We have There Is No Anti-Memetics Division by QNTM.
And the SEP Foundation.
So you recommended this book, so you talk about it.
It's a book about anti-memes. It's a sci-fi. I mean, okay, if you haven't ever heard of the SCP Foundation, it is a public science fiction kind of experiment that's been growing on the internet for, I think, like 2 decades now. It is a collection of stories in this universe of, there's like anomalies. There's some sort of like, there's a world beyond this world, kind of like Twilight Zone-ish, and there's a organization that is internationally trying to keep everybody safe. This is a collection of different short stories that has been molded into one narrative arc about one of the vignettes of, hey, this really dangerous thing has escaped, and this group of people that work in what's called the anti-memetics division have to stop it. But like the hallmark of this this universe is that anti-memes are ideas that can't really extend beyond the life of the conversation you're having them in. So kind of like the trick that recurs throughout the book is the characters in the book don't really understand they're in this story arc. And so every scene they have to relearn, hey, I have this job. It is a world-saving tier job. And now I got to react to this crazy situation with basically no prep. And so it is a fun meta concept of like anti-memes in a world of viral memes on the internet, and like what does it mean to have communities that have good ideas but maybe you don't want them to leak out into the rest of the world because they can't appreciate them in the way that like you really need the context for. There's a bunch of elements of like dark forest, like conflict, that you kind of talk about in here. It's just great writing in general. There's great metaphors in here, and it's just like an interesting book experiment in an era where we kind of need more interesting book experiments.
Yeah, and I'm 30, turning 39 this year, so I'm at the cusp of where I remember when memes were not a thing. And then
Yeah.
it became a thing. And in the beginning, like some people were starting to study memes and we were kind of like making fun of the fact that that could possibly be a major.
Yeah.
And now we're at the point where it is constantly weaponized and used as propaganda, right? So I feel like I'm viewing from the lens of like, oh, I remember when memes weren't a thing and now it is. And what can we do about that?
Yeah. The idea of memes being a meme is kind of a meme in itself.
Yeah, so please do like get a copy and follow along if you want to read it too, and we'll talk about it in 2 weeks' time.
All right.
Are we still
Good seeing
doing
everybody.
co-working tomorrow? On Thursday?
Yeah, Thursday co-working, yes.
Okay, all right. Join us if you want to get some tar tasks and hassle hurdles done. with
Adios.